And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You are tuned into the Status Network, the live TV channel, and this is a Conversation Corner with your host, the author, Andrew Snorton. And as we do every second and fourth Wednesday about this time, we're looking forward to having a conversation with some great guests, doing some great things across the board in entertainment, business, community, and more. So before we get into our first guest, we're going to take care of a quick station announcement and our public service announcement. So first off with the Status Network. Thank you so much, me personally, for tuning in and supporting the show, but also make sure to say, hey, thank you for supporting this entire network, all of the channels, all the shows, radio station, and more. So in order to best enjoy tonight's show, if you go on the internet, go to the website statusnetwork.net, click on channels, click on live TV, and then you should be able to go ahead and enjoy the show, and make sure to click on the Conversation Corner. So not only can you enjoy this show, but catch up on all the archival shows that we've done. For those of you that have space on your smartphone, make sure to download the Status Network app, click on channels, click on live TV, and you're good to go. On your social media platforms like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Periscope, YouTube, and other social media platforms, make sure to add Status Network as well as live TV. For those of you that have Roku and Amazon Fire Stick, make sure to go ahead and go to Status Network and cut us on, and you're fine. And if you haven't started following the host, I don't know what you're waiting for. So make that move right now. Go ahead and add me on Facebook at author Andrew Snorton, as well as Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, author A Snorton, and you are good to go. So those are the ways to best enjoy the show. Now we're going to go ahead and pivot to our public service announcements. So that way you're aware of different things that are taking place that you definitely want to take advantage of. Let's go ahead and take a look at our first public service announcement. And take a look at what we've got going on. This is for you or the filmmakers you know. Status Network, yes, we have a film channel. So for any filmmakers, documentaries, things along those lines, make sure to connect with us today. You see where you need to submit your film information at the bottom, films@statusnetwork.net, and make sure to dial the number that you see listed so that way you can get the exposure that you need. Our next public service announcement is, again, I Am Black Legacy. This is the line that's been designed by I Am Custom LLC, based out of Miami, Florida. They were one of our guests towards the end of March. It's a great line in regards to not only instilling pride, culture, but most importantly, building a legacy. So make sure to check out This Is Custom LLC on Facebook and Instagram in order to get your new merchandise. Our next public service announcement is the Gwinnett County chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. They were one of our guests again back in March. They had to put their 5K walk run on hold, obviously due to the current pandemic situation. But lo and behold, in being creative, mark June 13th on your calendars. It's a $35 entry fee. The proceeds go to support their nonprofit efforts, but you'll see it is a virtual run walk. So make sure to connect with them in order to stay fit, as well as help do some outreach and service. Our next public service announcement. This was actually a series that I'm excited to be involved in, all about the authors. This takes place every second and fourth Sunday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Zoom. One of our friends of the show, celebrity source Tyressa Ty, and I host that series. Last Sunday, we had Jamar Abair as well as Kechia Hardeman as our featured guests. So you can make sure, if you see the link that's provided right there in the ID, you should be able to view this past Sunday's talk. If not, just contact me and I'll get the information for you. Our next public service announcement is this past Sunday. It looks like I've been working. This past Sunday, shouts to the Winston-Salem Forsyth County chapter of the National Pan-Hellenic Council. That is the collective of our fraternities and sororities of African-American backgrounds. So first, I got to rattle off all nine, the Divine Nine: Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. I make sure I got to do it in order that they were founded: Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated, Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated, Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated, but I know I went out of order slightly, so charge it to my head and not to my heart. Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, and Iota Phi Theta Fraternity. Not bad for someone getting some salt and pepper, but shouts to all the great organizations up there in Winston-Salem, Forsyth County for a great Founders Day, as well as having me on board as one of the speakers. Our next public service announcement. Oh my goodness. Yours truly, June the 1st, shouts to Black Women Read. This is one of the book clubs who has a great interview series featuring authors. So guess who gets it started on June 1st? Ta-da! Hey, I'm real excited. So shouts to Black Women Read. Join me on their Instagram, which is Black Women Read and then _. That'll be June 1st at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Our next public service announcement is, again, as you know, yours truly, published author, couple books, couple audio books. Real briefly, looking from the right to the left, 9 Stories of Faith, Volume 1. That is for you or someone you know that can build and grow off of stories of empowerment, people overcoming challenges like physical health, mental health, life after incarceration, but through the lens of their faith, best practices with health and wellness, how they incorporate their support network, and how they pivoted their thinking. They are still living lives of power and purpose. Right below it, Deeper Than Your Deepest Sleep, Thoughts on Love with Joseph Snorton. that is for you or a reader you know that is a fan of poetry, looking at love through broader lenses, whether it's family, community, self-reflection, and more. And then on the bottom, the audio books, the author's mixtape. This is borrowing from the freestyle experience that you see in hip hop and R&B, as both books were written, recorded, all that, and then some within individual studio sessions, nothing pre-written. Volume 1 is a 7-track piece, and Volume 2 is an 8-track piece. So definitely make sure to check those out today. And I think that's most of our public service announcements. We'll have one more that's coming up, and this is from one of our partners, Creative Community Solutions. They do a little bit of everything, not only regarding sports coverage, media coverage, education services, things along those lines. So in just a moment, we're going to see one of their pieces talking about the ACT and SATs. Even though we know that landscape is changing a little bit, there's still a need, especially for student athletes and others, to go ahead and make sure you have those as other parts of the college process together. So in just a moment, we're going to take a look at that, and let's go ahead. Hey there, students and parents. As you're aware, due to the pandemic, there are some schools that are waiving their ACT and SAT requirements for the fall 2020 semester. You still want to be in contact with their admissions departments to see the criteria that they are going to use for admission. As for this coming summer, there are test dates for the ACT. June 13th, and July 18th. And starting in July of this year, you may register for the fall dates for the ACT. As for the SAT, you can register now as they will start back up with testing in August. But before those test dates come, reach out to us today for your options for individual and group sessions. Virtual sessions are available, and yes, we will preview and prep for the ACT and SAT. So reach out to us today and let's make it happen. And ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. So we had a lot of information that we were trying to cover, but again, we want to make sure that you're as informed and engaged as possible. And now it's time for our first interview. Our first guest is no stranger, as she was actually an interview guest earlier this year during the winter. Kechia Hardeman is her name, published author, community advocate, good steward, making sure that faith is living and in action. So we welcome Ms. Kechia Hardeman back on the show.
Intensity was able to force turnovers, and another thing, you were able to limit the type of explosive plays.
Hello, how everybody doing?
Hey, great, Kechia. Hey, good to see you again. Good to be seen. I tell you what, I think I just caught with you this Sunday as we saw you as one of the featured authors. I tell you what, since the last time you were on the show, you are covering a lot of ground. So to help refresh our viewers' memories, could you let people know where you are from and where you are based out of?
Okay, I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. I'm here based right in Atlanta, Georgia. So I'm right at home.
Okay, great. So here you are, Atlanta born, Atlanta raised, Atlanta living. And I think one of the first questions I want to ask you is this. And we know that faith is really at the center of what you do. So one of the first things I'd like for you to refresh our viewers' memories of is regarding your writing. You have written 2 books. Both are not only looking at through the lens of faith, but to a degree, it's almost like your testimony or memoir, so to speak. Could you walk through with our viewers both books that you have written?
Okay, sure. The first book is From the Seat to the Streets, From the Streets to the Seats. And actually we call it the Sean story, which is my story. Basically, me telling my life story, how I went from church as a child into going out into the streets, not literally living in the streets, but actually participate in things that of not church nature into the streets. And then how I got from where I was at to come back to the church and to where I'm at now. So that's this book. That's my first book about me. And then once I came out of the streets and got back into the seats of church and started living for God fully and wholly, I had to learn how to fight for me. So that's what this book is coming from. And it's a 14-day journey, and it's a prayer and worship book that I had to go through, and it's like a deliverance. So it helped me come out of from where I was stagnated at, basically from out of the streets.
So it sounds like both books, it's almost like your first book is really part 1 where you started, kind of drifted, but then I don't want to say got your groove back. That sounds like Stella got her groove back. But you regained your perspective. And now that you've regained your perspective, this is a space and place that you want to stay and want to continue to grow. What's something that you want to say to viewers out there who might have drifted, might have fallen off, or think that walk is not for them or that pathway is not for them? What would you want to share to our viewers out there?
I say that, sometimes when we out there and we always have been in church, or our grandmother was in church, our mom, and we have that better in us. It would never leave us. And once you out there, you get this pull on you, and you're like, I just need to go back to church. Just go back. Don't sweat it. Don't worry. Just make that first step, and that is to go back. And sometimes you have to just take that step when you get there, and then go from there. you know. But I always tell people, pray. Prayer is the number one key. You know, you have to pray. If it ain't nothing but calling Jesus' name. Sometimes people can't say a lot. So just call his name. And remember that prayer is not a big dialogue. It's really just having a conversation like me and you. Just having a day-to-day conversation. And once you have that momentum and have that conversation, you'll ease it right on back into it, you know. And just know that everybody in church was once some sinner. Something was going on. So there's nothing wrong with coming from the streets, going back to the sea.
And I'm glad you said that, because it's one of those, just come as you are. That's an adage I remember hearing my grandmama and them talking about that. My parents, you know, drop some gems and what have you. But I think it's great that you're reminding people, regardless of where you are, you always have an opportunity to pivot. You always have an opportunity to do something different. And I think when you hear that message, not only just hearing that message from the pulpit, but hearing that message from people that are sitting with you is real big and real important. Walk through with us, in addition to those two things, we know that stewardship and faith are not sedentary. They have to be active. Walk through a couple of the things that you're doing, and, you know, be it through the lens of faith and spirituality, you know, goodwill, advocacy. Walk through with us a couple of the things that you have in place, because ultimately it's about making this active and making this real. So walk through with that with us, please.
Okay, well, you know, if like I say, you can always get in contact with me as What Kechia. I have a podcast that goes on, and the podcast is basically is walking through life in my walk with God, you know, and to let people know that it's not hard to follow God. A lot of time we think it's hard, but it's really not hard. It's just finding your groove into the principles of what God has for you, and to be focused on God, you know. So I have that podcast going on where people wanted to get in. They can listen to What Kechia, and if they have any questions, they can always go on What Kechia Facebook and make it private. Nobody else will know our conversation. Also, I do have a prayer service, which is just once a year that I does Climate Jacob Ladder. And that way, if you feel like you just want to be a part of a group, and nobody is judgmental, we don't judge, we just bring everybody along, and we go up walking up Stone Mountain, and we teach you principles as walking up Stone Mountain, that things on you can be released off of you. And then we go into prayer, and we go back down for you to help someone else to come back up. That's the whole scenario is not just you coming up, but you grabbing hold to someone's hand and bringing them up with you.
And I want to pause for a moment, and it's great that you are, again, being active on that. I want to go to the podcast, because with your podcast series, you bring in a little bit of everybody, not only just members of the clergy, but other people who are really focused on making their faith real and making it active. And everything. Walk through with us again real quickly, like how that podcast came about, because granted, in today's times, technology, folks, you can technically do everything, but you're doing it with a real purpose that's bigger than, hey, here I am, I'm on camera. So walk through with us a little bit more about the push or the motivation behind that podcast.
Well, the motivation behind the podcast, it really started off as a seed that God planted inside of me. And it's not something that I would have just decided to do on my own. The purpose was that God wanted to use that podcast for that reason. And in the podcast, what I do invite is people, other clergy, and some of them is not other clergy, but, you know, like, for example, Eric is a young man who's also a school teacher, you know, he's just graduated from college, and he's walking the walk as a millennium, you know, and you go on the podcast, you can hear his conversation about it. Then you have You have Bridget. She's coming in. She's a clergy, but she also coming in is telling her story about how she got beautiful ashes, you know. So then you have Dr. Sherman. Dr. Sherman comes in and she give us a whole dynamic of love for God, you know. So you have to go in the podcast. Also, I have Kayla. She comes in and she starts talking about being delivered. So we have different things on there. Lately, I have just put in by being rejected. You know, also I have put in just people to know who I am and to talk about the book and why the book made a difference. Now, the podcast itself is all God based it, and it just you whatever questions you have about this walk, it can be answered on that podcast.
And I'm glad you're sharing that, because really what you're doing, you're talking with instead of talking at, because I know sometimes it's a fine line between being passionate and kind of like overreaching, and I don't want to say knocking somebody upside the head, but you know, sometimes people feel like there isn't a share and exchange. And I want to go to that second piece you were talking about with Jacob's Ladder. And one thing that really jumped out at me, there's a saying, build as we climb. And that's what was ringing in my head when you were talking about not only physically walking, but how do you translate that into other areas? And then now that you're at a point, you bring somebody with you. I think those are key points that you raised that our viewers really need to be aware of. So you've got the books, you've got the podcast, you've got, you know, through you know, prayer and things along those lines. Where do you see this going? And I know obviously part of it is your steps are being ordered, but where do you see this going as you continue with your journey?
As I continue on my journey, more books is coming out. More books is coming. God is directing it in a path where He's taking it. So I can't just tell you, oh, it's gonna be over here, over there, because that's not how God. He doesn't work that way, you know. But I am telling you now that it is growing. Is growing. A foundation will be birthed out of this, and we just taking a walk with God day by day, step by step. You know, I was want to say something you said about building. Even in every area of your life, you can be able to put a foundation in every part of your life through walking with God. You know, you just a one prayer when you wake up in the morning can change the whole day for you. You know, they can change your whole look on life, because you never know what the unseen is once you leave your house. So it's like you put a cover. So in this walk, you're walking in every area of your life, no matter whether you're going to go to church, online, as we do now, or if you're going to go inside of a building. You know, you can just go to your friend's house, you know, just a conversation with him in your car. You know, those things there is dropping like little nuggets with God, like little seeds, you know, and those things will come if you, as they started to grow, you would notice in every area of your life how that have blossomed, you know. And that's what a lot of time we have to come from the streets to understand, that what we see out there is just a mirage. It's not real.
Mm-hmm. And I'm glad you shared those things, because again, like I said before, you know, sometimes with all that you're doing, part of it, before you start moving, you're, you know, peace be still, you're slowing down. You had to slow down in order to put all your thoughts together to go ahead and have the books. You're slowing down to have those talks with people, to kind of share and exchange what's something that they know that can help you, and vice versa. You know, with the Jacob's Ladder, it's not just about your growth, but part of your growth is embedded in helping other people to grow.
Yes.
And ultimately, when I think about the faith community, some people, you know, and people have their thoughts, but the thing is, when faith is living and active. And that's something that I have seen, from day one and what I'm still seeing now. So let me ask you this, as we're gradually getting ready to wind this first segment down. In times like these, we know there's always going to be some type of challenge and whatnot, some type of disruption. What's something you'd like to share with people who are still feeling a little bit, for lack of a term, disturbed, disrupted, maybe a little bit dismayed, a little bit of confusion? What's one thing you'd like to leave with people to be like, despite all these moving parts, here's something for you to think about and consider that can get you back on track?
Are you saying because of what we're going through now? I would
Yes,
like
ma'am.
to okay, thank you. My thing is look to the hills for coming to your help. If everybody have had a grandmother or aunt have always said, if you don't know anything else, call on God. Call on the name of Jesus. Even though we're going through times that it seems like it's hard and rough, if you call on him, it will actually open up your eyes to see. You have to trust him. You have to have faith in him. You have to believe in him and know that he has us in his hands. No matter what goes on, he have us. We are all still here breathing. We're living. That he's breathing on us. So I tell anybody right now, if you're going through depression or you don't know what's to come next, you have nothing to lose. Trust God. Try it. Because you just might find out, you just might see that it's the right move.
That is all right. That is all right. Kechia, I tell you what, it's always a pleasure when we have these types of conversations. As we get ready to close out your segment, of course, we're going to have you to stick around when we do the recap at the end. Let our viewers know the best ways to get connected with you.
Okay, the best way to get connected with me would be the simplest way is What Kechia. What Kechia on all platforms. You got What Kechia YouTube, you got What Kechia Facebook, you got What Kechia Instagram. You can go ahead and you can just plug in and What Kechia and you have me all the way around. You want to purchase the books, you can also go on Amazon, Kechia Hardeman, and you can pick up the books on Amazon.
Sounds great. Well, Kechia, again, it is a pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you.
And you keep moving forward. You keep moving forward. Yeah. So what we're going to do at this point in time, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a commercial break. And when we come back, we've got a very, just powerful story. Real talk, another powerful story coming right up. So we're going to take our commercial break on the Conversation Corner with your host, the author, Andrew Snorton. ladies and gentlemen, we are back on the Status Network, the Conversation Corner with your host, the author, Andrew Snorton. And after that first guest really talking about, their journey, our next guest right here, I tell you what, Journey, it must be, I might have to start playing Journey, Don't Stop Believing or something along those lines. I am here with someone who I've been fortunate to get to know, great professional, great family man, and now he's just adding on to his greatness. We've got Adisa Aarons on the show. Adisa, how are you doing this fine evening?
I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself?
Hey, doing great, doing great. And for our viewers out there, let our viewers know where you are originally from and where you are based out of.
Well, I am originally from the Washington, D.C. metro area. That's where I was born and raised. When I graduated high school, I went to The Ohio State University, where I majored in construction management, graduated in 2009, and stayed in Ohio until the end of 2015. And so currently I'm here in the Atlanta, Georgia metro area, and I've been down here about a little bit over 4 years now.
Okay, awesome. So let's get this straight from the DMV. Shouts to the DMV. You know what? Mambo sauce, go-go, couple other things. Then, Buckeye. I'm sure you and your friends from the University of Michigan get along just fine.
Yeah.
And then it's like now you can find you in the A. So you've kind of almost come full circle. Full circle. So here you are in Atlanta. You're doing your thing professionally, family man. And I would be remiss if I did not mention, oh, brother of mine, Alpha Man, Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated in the house.
The greatest fraternity ever, yes.
Exactly. Well, I'll say outside the 12 disciples. We'll be good in perspective because some people like you blank alphas. I'm going to say this, outside the 12 disciples, we're next.
Yep.
So here you are, you have, grown, evolved, family, all these types of things. You are, doing your thing. And then all of a sudden there's something that gets added to your plate. And that is in regards to your health.
Yes.
Walk through with us. When, for lack of a term, when that house call came, walk us through the initial pieces regarding what was going on health-wise, what specifically as best as possible is going on health-wise, and what was your early, I'll say, reaction. So go ahead, please.
Okay. Well, I'm going to actually I have to go way back in order to really tell the story.
Sure.
So my mother has had breast cancer twice. She had it, the first time she had it she was diagnosed April 2014. And then the second time she was diagnosed was January 2019. After the second time that she was diagnosed, her doctors decided that they wanted to do some further testing to see what was really going on. And so it's kind of like a genetic testing. What they found out was that she was at risk potentially for some other cancers, and they decided they needed to test her children too. So myself and I have two older brothers. We all got tested. And my two older brothers did not carry this genetic trait. The MLH1 is what the trait is called, but I was a positive hit. And so I found that out probably, I want to say it was about April of 2019. One of the recommendations that came out of that was to go get a colonoscopy. So life kind of happened, getting appointments scheduled. Finally got in, I want to say it was like September, to go see a doctor, the gastroenterologist, a specialty doctor who does colonoscopies. So we got it scheduled we were going to do it December, right before Christmas, but they called at the last minute and said, hey, we need to reschedule you. We've got some emergencies that are coming up. So January 2nd, and unfortunately, I remember this like it was yesterday. It's kind of like Happy New Year, let's get the colonoscopy. And going into it, I thought, okay, it'll just be a routine thing. They're going to take a look. Everything's going to be fine. I'll probably have to go do it again in 5 years. And one of the things is they don't typically screen guys who were in their 30s. I'm only 33. So they usually don't start screenings for colonoscopies until you're 45. So there was a little hesitation at first, but I really pushed the doctor. I said, hey, this paperwork says I need to get this done. I know you're hesitant about doing it. I'm hesitant about doing it, but we have to do this. So January 2nd, go in there, get the colonoscopy done. My wife's in the waiting room, and we had dropped my daughter off at daycare. Everything seemed fine. Did the preparation the night before, which is not the most fun thing in the world. But laid down on the table, they hooked me up, went to sleep. They did the colonoscopy, woke up, my wife came back in the room, and then the doctor came in and he said, you have cancer. And so that kind of was like, whoa, because it was something that I completely did not expect him to say. Of all things he was going to say, I expected him to come in there and say, well, hey, everything's fine. See you in 5 years. It took me a while to process it. My wife, obviously, she took it a little bit differently than I did, because her reaction, because I think it hit her a lot harder than it hit me. So my first mindset was kind of, okay, what happens next? So immediately just start scheduling appointments. Pretty much throughout the whole month of January, it seemed like once a week I was going to the doctor, going to a different appointment, dealing with the cancer diagnosis, or I was on the phone with the doctor, or just different ideas. And so one of the first things we had to do was get surgery scheduled. And one of the things that I did when I moved down here to Atlanta, and I'm actually glad that I did, I set all my doctors up through Emory University, just because I thought Emory's a good healthcare system.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. and if anything ever goes wrong, I want to be in a good healthcare system where I know I can be taken care of. So, was able to get my surgery set up and got it scheduled for February 26th, which was a good thing because it allowed me to get some things taken care of at work, get some things taken care of around the house. I went to the surgery, and the surgery, it felt like it took forever, because it was supposed to start at 1 o'clock, but ended up not starting until 4 o'clock, and then they weren't done until 8, and then it was like 10 or 11 o'clock when I finally got into my hospital room. And so surgery was very successful. They were able to get everything removed. The stage that I was at when I was diagnosed was stage 3. So kind of looking back on it, I'm glad that I took the genetic tests, and I'm glad that I got the results, because if I did not do that process, there's a potential that you and I could be having a completely different conversation right now.
And I'm glad you said that the key thing is being as proactive as possible.
Yes.
And like you said, the initial testing was saying, hey, look, genetically speaking, there might be something going on. And then second, like you said before, the sooner the better, definitely rings out. So now here you are, a little bit more awareness with the family history, a little bit more awareness in regards to your individual testing. One hurdle is cleared. Walk us through the current hurdle that you have to clear.
So currently I'm undergoing chemotherapy, which is a little bit challenging during this time that we're in with the pandemic. Mainly, typically when you do chemotherapy, you're allowed to have one person with you. And that one person, for obvious reasons, would be my wife. But because of all that's going on, they really don't want a lot of people from outside just hanging out in the hospital.
Right.
And that's, it's a little bit tough, but, at the same time, it's for everyone's best interest, just because cancer patients, when we go through chemotherapy, a lot of our white blood cells are kind of removed during that process. So we're more prone to catch, anything that could happen, and it could be deadly. So my chemotherapy started on April 24th. I've done 2 IV treatments so far. My third one's going to be next Thursday, and I believe I either have 1 or 2 more left after next Thursday, and then I should be kind of clear after a couple more weeks to resume kind of my normal day-to-day activities and hopefully be able to get back to work too.
Okay. Now, let me ask you this during this process, and this is part of the, I'll say, education and empowerment. What are some of the adjustments you may have had to make, whether your diet, your physical activity, that really are aligned to making sure, for lack of a term, your body's right or as right as possible?
Yeah.
Walk through with that with our viewers, because oftentimes with cancer, and I know from like my dad's experience, other people I know who've had prostate and what have you, we talk about, the treatment, but then there's other components that people need to be aware of, that these are things you can still do through the lens of, like I said, physical activity or your diet or what have you. So walk through some of those things that you're doing now that you feel are helping equip and empower you as you're on this part of your journey.
So the number one thing that I did was I started making some changes to my diet. And, the reason I did that was the last thing that I want to do is, once I complete this journey, I don't ever want to have to put myself or put my family through this situation. Luckily, my daughter is at an age, she'll be 22 months at the end of this week, but she's at an age where hopefully she will never remember any of this. And I want to make sure that I do everything I can to kind of see her grow up and live. And also, if the good Lord blesses me with another child, I want to be able to see that other child grow up and live as well. So one of the things I did was I did used to eat a lot of red meat. I've cut that back significantly. I haven't cut it out completely, but I've cut it back enough. And another thing that I did was also portion control. One of the things going through chemotherapy is that you have to eat small meals. If you try to overdo it, then it won't be a good feeling, 20 minutes or 30 minutes later.
And I want to pause you there, because smaller portions, like you see it in European countries, but I'll admit here, what is it? The all you can eat stuff, the itis, all that type of stuff. Feel like, oh my goodness, oh my gosh. So it's like, you're like, hey, look, that's fun and games when you're younger, but now, based on what you're trying to do, there are adjustments that you have to make. So I'm glad that you're sharing that. In addition, are there other dietary adjustments that you've had to make?
I've also tried to, and this is one of the things with the chemotherapy, it does kind of tire me out. But I have been trying to kind of keep my body moving as much as I can. Whether it's just, say, walk to the car or walk to the mailbox, at least, kind of get up and do some moving, so that way my body knows that it's still, working. So one of the things I'm pleased to say is that since my cancer diagnosis, the surgery, and the chemotherapy, I have lost around 20 pounds, which is, a good thing. And once everything is all said and done, I want to really try to make sure that I continue to do the things that I've been doing now to prevent myself from ever getting back in this situation again.
And that's awesome that you're sharing that, because again, sometimes they say, health is wealth, or, what you take in is what you put out. So like you said, even still, you're still doing your physical activity. You are still looking at diet. You're looking at other things. And one of the things which I think is going to be a bridge in this conversation, and it kind of ties with one of the themes I talked about in 9 Stories of Faith, is your support network. Now, I know you've got an awesome family that is there day in and day out, but there's something else that, your colleagues, or I'll say your family, PHAM, have done. Walk us through the Adisa Beats Cancer campaign. So walk through with that with our viewers, please.
So one of the things, after I got diagnosed, I was trying to figure out a way, okay, how am I going to publicly tell my story? because I wanted people to know, and I wanted people to be able to learn from what I was going through, because if I figured if I could save just one life, then I'm doing my job. So I partnered up with Daisha Kimball, who's in the Atlanta, Georgia area. And she runs a design company, Daisha's Designs. And went to her and I said, hey, I've got this idea to do a fundraiser by selling T-shirts. Are you interested? And she jumped right on it. You know, we sat, you know, we got together, we brainstormed, and I'm actually wearing one of the T-shirts here.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, so we got it together quickly. When I did my public announcement, I, you know, put the link to sell the T-shirts there, and I would say within the first 24, 48 hours, we had 90, 95 people who jumped on board and ordered a T-shirt. And I think today we're probably about 200 people who have ordered a T-shirt. And so a portion of those proceeds came to me, and that kind of helped me pay down my medical bills.
Right, right.
Which was,
Which,
you know,
and I apologize for interrupting, which
Yep.
is totally understandable, because part of doing that is, hey, look, this is one thing of offsetting something.
Yep.
Do you feel like not only in regards to, you know, the self-help piece, but it's also continuing to keep people informed, educated, equipped, and empowered? What do you see yourself doing in addition to this under the Adisa Beats Cancer platform?
So one of the things I've been doing is we launch a page on Facebook, Adisa Beats Cancer. And then also we do a hashtag, Adisa Beats Cancer. Once I started putting that out there, my goal was just every week I've been kind of just telling my story. Okay, this is I'm doing well. This is what's going on. Something else that I started doing was every time I go in for my IV treatments at Emory University Hospital, I do a T-shirt day. And so I just ask people to wear your shirts, take pictures, and we're going to put them up on social media. And what that's been doing is that it's just bringing different kind of awareness. People are seeing the shirts. I didn't realize how popular just even the idea of selling the T-shirt was going to become. Because when I first put it out there, I thought, okay, well, maybe 50, 60 people might buy the shirt. But to have over 200 people, family, friends, my Alpha brothers, AKAs, just so many different people, even people who I've never even met, complete strangers were buying the shirt. Or I think the other day I got a text from a friend from the Washington, D.C. area. She was wearing the shirt out and about. And, you know, people said, oh, I'm going to pray for him, you know. And that's, you know, the prayers just help, you know, because every time you go in that chair to get the treatment, you know, it's a rough day. It's a rough couple of days. But with those prayers, it motivates me to kind of keep going and keep getting back up every day and not give up.
Well, I tell you what, from what we're hearing and from what I kind of sort of know, I don't think giving up is part of your character. And you've already spoken regarding your faith, regarding what are better practices you can incorporate. And not only that, not only being able to help yourself, but in helping yourself, you don't know how many other people you are motivating, encouraging, equipping, inspiring, saying, hey, look, if he can, then I can. And those things are real important. So let's do this. As we get ready to wind this segment down, and we're going to bring you and Kechia back on for a quick recap, remind people the best ways to get connected with the Adisa Beats Cancer campaign.
Okay. So right now there's only a Facebook page, Adisa Beats Cancer. If you do go on Instagram and Twitter, if you type in the Adisa Beats Cancer hashtag, you're able to see all the posts, and then you can get a link to my personal profile, Mr. Year 43215, on Twitter and Facebook. And in the link on my Instagram post, you can click directly to Dacia's Designs and be able to get to the website and order a shirt if you would like to order a shirt. And for every shirt that's purchased, a portion of the proceeds goes to help me pay the medical bills that I've had from the surgery and other procedures.
Okay, that is awesome. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a very short commercial break. When we come back, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to bring Kechia and Adisa back for a quick recap, and then we're going to speak real briefly to one, I'll say, disturbance that's going on, but also to stay encouraged and motivated. So this is the Conversation Corner with your host, the author, Andrew Snorton. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. So we've got a couple of moments before we draw our show to a close, but we've got both of our guests here, Kechia Hardeman, Adisa Aarons, both in their own way, stewardship, advocacy, outreach, things along those lines, their respective journeys, their passion, their purpose. Kechia, again, what's one takeaway that you want our viewers to have regarding what you're doing?
One takeaway that I want viewers to have for what I'm doing is I'm advocating for God. I want them to know that He is the source. He's not only the creator, but He's there to help us along our journey as we get ready to go to our next journey in life.
Awesome, awesome. And again, remind our viewers the best ways to get connected with you.
Okay, the best way to get connected with me is you can remember what Kechia, and it's spelled Kechia. It's because it's Kechia spelled different, so it's what Kechia, Kechia. You can go on Instagram, you can go on Facebook, and you can do what Kechia, and it'll pop up on YouTube.
Okay, awesome. And again, Kechia, thank you for joining us tonight. Adisa, just finished talking with you, but what is one takeaway that you want our viewers to have when it comes to your journey?
I think the most important thing is go to the doctor every year. Get your annual checkup done. If you think that there's a history of cancer in your family, or if you know there's a history of cancer in your family or any other ailment, try to find out, what's going on and try to get yourself tested. And if main thing about it is be proactive with your health, because if you're proactive, you don't have to be reactive.
Awesome. Awesome advice. And again, remind viewers the best ways to get connected with the campaign.
Okay. So on Facebook is the name of the page is Adisa Beats Cancer. If you go to Twitter or Instagram, you can just do hashtag Adisa Beats Cancer, and you can get a link to my personal profile, Mr. Year 43215, and there's a link there to order the shirts online.
Okay, awesome. I thank you both for being on the show tonight. Continued well wishes with all you're working on. And before we go, I wanted to take at least a brief moment to touch base on, I know, challenging times are going on right now. And I know by now a number of people, in addition to what happened in Central Park with Christian Cooper and Amy Cooper, I think what kind of put more kerosene on a fire is what happened in Minneapolis with George Floyd. If you haven't seen it, Mr. Floyd was alleged to have done basically writing bad checks, which, okay, you don't want to do that. But by the same token, if you have seen the video, you understand why. If you haven't, we're just going to say that the use of force on an unarmed citizen is already problematic. It's even more problematic when you look at the perpetrators and look at the victims. It would be remiss if we did not say something about this and know that real briefly, it is a challenging time, and it's totally understandable to be in your emotions. We get it. But by the same token, we cannot stay stuck there. And just like you've seen with everybody else, pivot, look at constructive ways to really address this issue and address this problem. So as we get ready to close out, because we've got to get ready for our next show, I want to thank everybody for taking time to be on here today. Please encourage and support our guests for tonight, as well as all of our guests. Our next show will be on June 10th at about this time. So thank you so much. Be safe, be blessed. Until next time, this is the author Andrew Snorton on the Conversation Corner on the Status Network, and we are out. Take good care.